What is Duel Masters? Duel Masters is more than an exciting new trading card game. It's your chance to become a Kaijudo master, an expert in the ancient art of fighting with giant monsters. To play a Duel Masters game, you need a deck with at least 40 Duel Masters cards in it. You also need a friend with his own deck. Your personal deck can have whatever cards you want in them. It's completely up to you. You choose which fierce monsters you want to fight for you. You choose which tricky spells you want to surprise your opponent with. The object of the game is to break all your opponent's shields and then attack him one more time to win the game. To do that, you'll need creatures and spells. Let's get familiar with the cards and how they work in the game. This is a creature. You can tell because it says creature here. And it has a power number here. A creature's power shows how strong it is in battle. This creature's name is Deadly Fighter Braidclaw, and its creature type is Dragonoid. You can have all different types of creatures in your deck. It costs 1 mana to summon it to the battle zone. This is the text box. Lots of creatures have special rules and abilities. This one must attack each turn if it can. When a creature is in the battle zone, you have to do what it says. When it's anywhere else, like in your graveyard or mana zone, just ignore the text unless it says otherwise. Lots of creatures have flavored text as well. This isn't important to the game, it's just for fun. Creatures are very important to the game because after you summon them, they stay in the battle zone and fight for you. You need creatures to break your opponent's shields and win the game. This is a spell card. They don't have a power number in the corner, and they say spell on them here. This spell is called Death Smoke. It costs 4 mana to cast. When you cast a spell, you do what it says to do in the text box. If you can't do everything it says, just do as much as you can. Then you put the spell card into your graveyard. Spells only have a one-time effect, but they can be very powerful. Before we get started, let's see what a full game looks like. This is the shield zone. Each player starts the game with 5 shields. When you break all of your opponent's shields, you attack him one more time to win the game. This is the battle zone. The creatures that you summon go into the battle zone, and that's where they fight for you. This is your mana zone. Each player has one. Mana is magical energy that you use to pay for creatures and spells. The more mana you have, the bigger your creatures and spells can be. This is your deck. At the start of each turn, you draw a card from your deck, so you always have new creatures to summon and new spells to cast. This is your graveyard. When a creature is destroyed, or when a spell is finished, you put it in your graveyard. Hey, you know enough. Now let's duel! To start a Duel Masters game, each player shuffles his deck. Decide randomly who will start the game. You might want to flip a coin or play rock, paper, scissors to decide. Before you start playing, take the top 5 cards from your deck and put them face down in a row in front of you. Don't look at them. These are your shields. Your opponent does the same thing. During the game, you'll try to break your opponent's shields, and he'll try to break yours. Next, draw the top 5 cards of your deck. You can look at these cards. This is your playing hand. Your opponent does the same. The cards in your hand are what you can play. Now that you're set up, it's time to start playing. Your turn has 6 steps. The first step is to start your turn. This is when you reset all of your cards on the table. Since you don't have any yet, we'll skip this part. We'll talk about this again on turn 2. The second step is to draw a card. But wait, the player who goes first doesn't draw a card on his first turn. We'll skip this part too. Don't worry, we'll get to it on turn 2. The third step is to put a card into your mana zone. You don't have to do this every turn, but you really want to at the beginning of the game. Mana is what you use to pay for creatures and spells, and without mana, you can't do anything at all. Choose a card in your hand that you don't think you'll use right away. Put it into your mana zone upside down so you can read the number in the circle. That card will stay in your mana zone for the rest of the game. You can get mana out of it every turn. You can only put 1 card into your mana zone each turn, so after you do that, this step is over. Step 4 is to summon creatures and cast spells. You can summon as many creatures as you want, and you can cast as many spells as you want, as long as you have enough mana to pay for them. Let's summon Deadly Fighter Braidclaw. It costs 1 mana. Braidclaw is from the Fire Civilization. You can tell because it's red. There are 5 different Duel Masters civilizations: Fire, Darkness, Light, Nature, and Water. They each have their own special strengths and strategies. You can use any combination of civilizations in your deck. Since Braidclaw is from the Fire Civilization, you have to use a Fire mana to pay for it. Since the card in your mana zone is red, it makes Fire mana. To get mana, you tap the card in your mana zone. That means you turn it sideways. When you tap a card, that shows you've used it for the turn. Now that you've paid for Deadly Fighter Braidclaw, put it into the battle zone. You don't have any more mana this turn, so this step is over. Step 5 is to attack with your creatures. But wait, the first turn you put a creature into the battle zone, it has summoning sickness. It took so much magical energy to create it that it's too tired to attack yet. Since Braidclaw can't attack yet, this part of the turn is over. Step 6 is to end your turn. Now it's your opponent's turn. He draws a card. He puts a card into his mana zone. He can summon creatures and cast spells, but he must not have anything that only costs 1 mana. He can attack, but he doesn't have any creatures to attack with. His turn is over. Now it's your turn again. Step 1, start your turn. Remember, this is when you reset everything you have. You untap your creatures and your mana cards by straightening them out. Now they're ready to be used again. Step 2, draw a card. Since it's not the very first turn of the game anymore, you draw a card from your deck. Step 3, put a card into your mana zone. You only have 1 mana card. You need more. Put another card into your mana zone from your hand. Step 4, summon creatures and cast spells. You can summon Writhing Bone Ghoul now. It costs 2 mana, and you have 2 mana available. Writhing Bone Ghoul is from the Darkness Civilization. You can tell because it's black. To summon it, you need 2 mana, and at least one of them has to be from the Darkness Civilization. The other one can be from any civilization. Tap your 2 mana cards and put Writhing Bone Ghoul into the battle zone. Step 5, attack. Writhing Bone Ghoul can't attack yet because it has summoning sickness, but Deadly Fighter Braidclaw can attack. In fact, it has to attack because that's what it says on the card. When you attack with a creature, you tap it. That shows you're using it for the turn. Next, you choose what to attack. You can attack one of your opponent's tapped creatures, or you can attack your opponent. Since your opponent has no tapped creatures, you'll have to attack him. You break a shield. You choose which shield to break. Then your opponent picks it up and puts it in his hand. He only has 4 shields left. Step 6, end your turn. Let's skip ahead a few turns and see what the game looks like now. At this point, you and your opponent each have a bunch of mana cards and creatures. Step 1, start your turn. Untap all your cards so you can use them again. Step 2, draw a card. Step 3, put a card into your mana zone. You have 6 cards in your mana zone now, so you might not want to put any more cards into your mana zone. It's up to you. Step 4, summon creatures and cast spells. Let's cast a spell this time. You have Death Smoke in your hand. It costs 4 mana, and at least 1 mana must be from the Darkness Civilization. Tap the mana you need now. Cast Death Smoke. You can choose any of your opponent's untapped creatures and send it to his graveyard. You might as well pick the biggest one, right? Choose his Tri-Horned Shepherd. When the spell is finished, put it into your graveyard. Step 5, attack. You have a couple of creatures that can attack. Creatures attack one at a time, so you get to decide which one goes first. Let's attack with Skeleton Soldier the Defiled. Skeleton Soldier the Defiled can attack your opponent or one of his tapped creatures. Let's attack Burning Mane. Tap Skeleton Soldier the Defiled and say what it's attacking. Now the 2 creatures battle. When creatures battle, you check each one's power. This is usually just the number in the corner, but sometimes spells and abilities can give a creature more power. Skeleton Soldier the Defiled has 3,000 power, and Burning Mane has 2,000 power. Skeleton Soldier the Defiled has more power, so it wins the fight. Burning Mane is put into your opponent's graveyard. Let's do it again! Tap Writhing Bone Ghoul to have it attack Ryosol the Oracle. This time, both creatures have 2,000 power. When both power numbers are the same, the creatures destroy each other. You put Writhing Bone Ghoul in your graveyard, and your opponent puts Ryosol in his graveyard. Remember, for each creature, you choose whether to attack your opponent to break a shield, to attack one of your opponent's creatures to destroy it, or not to attack at all. Step 6, end your turn. Now your opponent gets a chance to go. How do you win the game? First, you have to break all your opponent's shields. But the game's not over yet. You still keep playing, even after all your shields are gone. You have to successfully attack your opponent one more time after all his shields are gone to win. Now that you can see how to play a turn, let's take a closer look at the cards. To be a Duel Masters champion, you need to understand what the cards can do for you. Let's take a look at your card's special abilities. Lots of cards have special abilities that change the course of the game. That's what makes each Duel Masters match different. Two of the most important abilities are Blocker and Shield Trigger. Blocker is a very important special ability that you'll see on some creatures. Nightmaster Shadow of Decay is a creature with Blocker, so it has the special Blocker symbol. Let's look at a Blocker in action. You have Nightmaster in the battle zone. On your opponent's turn, he decides to attack with Burning Mane. It doesn't matter whether Burning Mane is attacking you or one of your creatures. You can tap your blocker to force Burning Mane to fight with it instead. Nightmaster Shadow of Decay has more power than Burning Mane, so Burning Mane is put into your opponent's graveyard. Blockers can protect your creatures and your shields. You need to tap a blocker to have it block an attack, so it has to be untapped before the battle for you to use it this way. Summoning Sickness only affects attacking, not blocking, so you can tap a creature to block soon after you summon it. Remember, only a creature with the blocker ability can block an attack. The most exciting special ability in the Duel Masters game is Shield Trigger. When your opponent's creature breaks one of your shields, you pick it up and put it into your hand. If that card has the Shield Trigger ability, you can cast it immediately on your opponent's turn, for free. Show your opponent the card, do what it says, then put it into your graveyard. Let's see a Shield Trigger in action. You only have one shield left, and your opponent has two creatures that can attack. It looks like he's going to win. He attacks you and breaks your last shield. But look, it's Terror Pit. This Shield Trigger spell destroys any creature you choose. Before your opponent can attack you one last time for the win, you cast Terror Pit for free and destroy that creature. As you can see, there are lots of different Duel Masters cards with all kinds of powerful abilities. There are way too many to list here. But why would you want to keep watching this when you can play a Duel Masters game instead? Discover the cards for yourself, build your own personal deck, and soon you'll be a Kai Judo Master too.